They are absolutely in the race there. Don't listen to any of the Man United fans in your life saying they're not. Now, Anthony Moyles is with us to look back and try and make some sense from an interesting weekend of Gaelic football action that maybe later in the year we look back and go, okay, that there's something started to emerge there. In terms of the list of things where you're thinking of, like, are Mayo performing? Is Kerry not performing? Are the Dubs getting players back? Is that more important than the fact that actually they still look fairly open and not quite sure of their identity? What are your takeaways on the weekend?
Where do you want to go first? Mayo?
Yeah, let's do Mayo.
I thought, you know, I don't think two things. I don't think Kerry will be too worried. I think Jack O'Connor will be saying to himself, right, with Cork are definitely a different outfit than they were the last number of years, right? So he's saying to himself, Munster is not going to be the cakewalk as it has been over the last number of years. So I definitely need my big guns back. They were way off it pace-wise. Slow. They need to quicken things up massively. You could just see them. There was a real lack of energy with Kerry in the first half. But, you flip it. I think they were 17-4 down at one stage. And then Mayo, like if McStay, and I'm sure they will look at it, people getting all, really enamoured about Mayo's performance. Yes, it was good first half. They cut them open. But Kerry were at 6s and 7s. Really, really poor. Really silly things coming out of defence and just hoofing ball. We warned last week about O'Sullivan, and I said, well, let's see if the Mockers gets put on him and let's see how he performs. And that's what happened. The Mayo defence tightened up, and I'm not saying, it's a harsh lesson for a fella to learn. You get man the match one week and then you get whipped off the second time. And look, he'll bounce back from it, and that's going to be a measure of him if he can. But Hessian was put on to Paddy Clifford, and that was a good move by Mayo, so they got good matchups. They obviously recognised that as we spoke about in the last game, that Clifford obviously is the quarterback role, dropping deep, and they just put Hessian on him, and Hessian went everywhere and did a really good job on him. So I could see McStay and the lads, Rochford was saying, the second half there was spells where we were poor because they went a long time. I think they went over 20 minutes without a score in that second half, Mayo. And they only kicked 2 50s and I think on 1 or 2 other points. So Kerry brought on the bigger guns. So Clifford and O'Shea come on, and all of a sudden there's pandemonium. So obviously to bring that quality, but you could see the rest of the players raise their games around them. So the rest of the fellas are, all of a sudden there's a bit of energy in the team. And even though the game was done and dusted, you'd kind of look at it and go, okay, now he's getting a bit closer. I'd say he probably only had 4 or 5 starters of a team that you would expect to be the All-Ireland kind of team that they'll push through in the first round of the championship.
Even then, because notwithstanding the fact that they're going to have a game against Cork in Munster, it doesn't actually matter either, because after that we're going into, then there's a round robin, and in that round robin only one team in your group of 3 is going to be eliminated. So even then you still have loads of room to get to. So the quarterfinal team in the All-Ireland is still 12, 13, 14 weeks away. He's got plenty of time to get those guys in and
plenty of time,
get to a level where they're managing themselves.
I think so. And they probably it is the thing of the season. When you go, you win your All-Ireland, you celebrate, you go, you obviously have the club run that certain players had. There's a hangover from it. You just have to get back at it. And then you have levels sometimes where you're trying to do an extra bit of work during the week.
Yeah.
So that, they might be doing 4 or 5 sessions during the week, and all of a sudden they're coming in.
That's what the Limerick Hurlers did last year, we found out afterwards.
Yeah, and you're trying to give new lads runs, and just sometimes it just doesn't work out. And it's hard for fellas, because you're coming in and if you're a new fella and you're in with under 12 or 13 of the kind of experienced fellas, well then you're saying, actually I can show up here. But when you've got 7 or 8, you're not used to the patterns, you're not getting the ball that maybe some other guys will give you, you're just and the performance is just down. All of a sudden then the usual thing is, fellas get whipped off, and it can be harsh. It can be harsh on a guy trying to break in. It's much easier to break in as a 1 or 2 into a season squad. So look, I don't think Kerry will be too worried. I think he has a realisation that, look, I need to get these fellas back on the pitch now. I need to start up on the levels with regard to energy and fitness and and I think Mayo would be wise not to get too far ahead of themselves, because as you know, I heard your boys talking earlier on, Connacht is no cakewalk, and the levels are being risen there in every aspect. So I think McStay and them, they'll realise that. They are finding some patterns, you know, and the O'Shea thing in full forward and dropping out to 11 is causing mayhem. And what he's doing this time is he's just being a ball winner, and he's then able to take the hits and transfer the ball off. He's not even thinking about really turning around, getting his own score, which he kind of felt a bit of pressure. I felt sometimes when he went in there before that he had to get scores as well. Actually, he should be just ball winning and just laying off the fellas coming fast at pace. So Mayo, but that team, strangely enough, that team wasn't far off probably Mayo's starting 15. I would feel, whereas Kerry were way off it.
And it's no harm for Mayo though to get that level of confidence going early in the season. It felt a little bit like they needed that. Those patterns of play you're talking about that Kerry will get later in the summer, they've plenty of time to get to that. Mayo don't really have plenty of time if they want to come through Connacht feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they need to establish it early, and they need to work on it early. And you know what? So what if everyone notices they're doing it? Just get it good. Have the pattern right. Have a B, you know, a B passage to go to if needs be, which they have because they can bring O'Shea out. But no, I think Mayo will be happy, but I don't think Kerry will be overly worried.
Can you read any sort of template into how to beat Kerry, or is that reading too much into it?
I think it's reading too much into it. You know, their half-back line was weak. Morley, they had Morley doing his usual +1 role. And what really caught them was, and you can see it from Flynn's man-of-the-match performance, was this kind of a late run where you're coming in off the left-hand side and you're coming in and you're cutting across the middle of the pitch to get a ball handed to you. So what's happening is the ball's not going in for Morley to intercept, but what's happening is you're playing the ball in front of him. So he's then having to step up, and it's a very, very difficult thing as a sweeper if you need to step up but a guy is coming at pace and at an angle on you, because all you can do there is you foul him and you're gone, or you're on a black card, or you have to try to step with him, and it's very difficult because you're obviously in a stagnant position. He's coming at you at pace, and if that cross is done really well, which pretty much for nearly all of his scores, if you look at it, it was all a similar type of pattern. He was coming in onto his right foot at speed, a ball transferred to him, very, very difficult to stop. And how you stop that is you stop it at source. And what had happened was Kerry had dropped back, and if you notice the scores, Mayo kind of stood away from them and then came at pace. And they do have strong big runners like around the middle of the field, you know, there's no denying that. Yeah. And I think where they had that pace before from a deeper position, as in Keegan, you know, and the lads coming from, say, half back or full back even, they're now having it more from their half forward line. Their half forwards before with McLaughlin lads used to be foragers, you know, they used to be lads in behind midfield, whereas now I think they're actually saying, well, actually we've big men and we've big fast men in that half forward line who can actually be a little bit further up the pitch and who can come at the ball and angle. I mean, like if you've a mass defence or even a block defence, if you've a fella coming at you 6'2", 6'3", with power and speed, there's very little you can do there. Very, very little. And even when he goes down with a tackle, it's generally a free, you know.
They'll have Roscommon potentially to contend with in Connacht, and I certainly have been raving about Davy Burke for quite some time. He's an excitable character on the touchline for sure, but whatever he's doing with Roscommon, it's working. You've Enda Smith, who's imperious yesterday. Yeah. Ben O'Carroll deserves a mention as well. But 3 wins from 3. They're fairly unstoppable at the moment.
Yeah. I thought Armagh were poor.
Yeah.
I thought Armagh were poor. I'd say McGeeney will be he'll be lighting into them this week, because they did things that is very un-Armagh like, you know, kicking the ball up in the air, just giving ball away, being very sloppy, and again a kind of a lack of energy, whereas Roscommon brought all the energy. Every single time a Roscommon man was on the ball, he had 2 or 3 options off his shoulder. Fellas running for him, fellas out in front. And we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Roscommon always had really, really good silky forwards who could kill you on their day. But the worry was, were they doing enough coming back and helping out and the work rate and different stuff like that? And that would have been thrown at them a little bit. They had a young midfield, they had a decent kind of a spine which was young, but I'm telling you, they're coming of age, and what he has brought into them is a work ethic, and they are all working for each other. And whereas before, you know, when push came to shove, they may have just not made that run back, they're making those runs now.
I don't think anybody feels like they're guaranteed their position in the team. I'm sure he knows his first 15 very well, but he's not letting them think that they're guaranteed a place in the team, which is very difficult to do. You're creating depth, and all the management teams talk about trying to create that, but he's legitimately, you be man of the match one week, you're not starting the next week, and calling players out for missing chances after games doesn't happen very much, casually enough. But as I call it, so I don't know.
But it's the right thing to do, Ger.
Very impressive character.
Yeah, but it's the right thing to do because there's too much in management these days of that everything is all it has to be. The message has to be given in a certain way and in a nice way so we don't upset. These lads are as professional as it comes, right? So you have to take the knocks and you have to stand up there. And by the way, if you miss a mistake or you know it yourself, so you put your hand up yourself and you go, actually, that's my fault. But what was interesting yesterday, I saw Cox came on, and I'm not saying he's not that type of player, but he wouldn't be a fella who would be racing back. But he had a chance, he got turned over, and his first instinct, and I haven't seen this or not, but his first instinct was to chase back, and he chased all the way back nearly to the corner back position. Now it was just a small little thing, but it just said to me, as a fella coming on who probably would have been one of their main forwards the last number of years, was a sub, and is now saying to himself, "Oh, I made a mistake there. I need to go back and chase it back." Exactly. That's a change in culture in the team, and you can see that throughout the squad.
We're not saying Roscommon are All-Ireland contenders, but we are saying that they're going to give the All-Ireland contenders their fill of it in at least a round robin and maybe in a knockout game. That's what they should be aiming for this year.
Absolutely, and I think they can play it either way with you. They've come up against obviously defensive teams. They've come up against teams in a shootout. They can, if they get into a big pitch, they've plenty of pace. They've plenty of forwards. They have a good half back line that can come up and kick scores. I like Doyle yesterday, midfielder number 9.
Yeah,
young lad, but man, he was getting stuck in. He made some vital little kind of just certain roles that he did yesterday and certain plays that he did yesterday were just vital for the team, but can go unnoticed, like dirty ball winning, winning balls from sidelines where he had to come and win it amongst 3 men, and fellas hopping off him, and he was still able to stand up and win it. He won a few big kickouts when he needed to do. So yeah, they're gelling really, really nicely. McGeeney, I don't think McGeeney will throw the toys out of. He will throw the toys out of the pram. He'll most definitely throw the toys out of the pram this week. He's a good few injuries, but I felt up front they had O'Neill's number a bit, and then I felt they were very, very light up front, Armagh. I was kind of going, where are the scores going to come from here? Duffy had his 4, but then
should have given the ball off as well to Grugan at one point for a goal.
They could have had 1 or 2, but I still don't think they deserve to win the game.
No,
I just don't think I thought they were a bit sloppy yesterday.
It's all positive shoots. We shouldn't be surprised that Davy Burke would breed success. I know he had the All-Ireland under-20s with Kildare and won a championship I think with Sarsfields as well in Kildare, and then gets into county management, which is different. But Mark McHugh in the backroom team as well, there is an importance there that you have lads in the backroom team that inspire the team. Look, there seems to be positive shoots coming out of the Roscommon backroom team, but I don't know. They're just it's the way in which they're winning games as well, Anthony. We were talking earlier about the fact that they're 3 points down to Tyrone. They score 3 second half goals. They score 5 the 5 last points against Galway as well. So it's the manner of the victories as well, I think.
Yeah, well, again, that goes back to the culture is thrown around a lot, but it goes back to the environment that he has created amongst the squad. They obviously are all fighting for each other. They're all fighting for a place. So when you get a fella coming off the bench, he's now going, this is an opportunity for me. I have to come in here. First of all, I have to do my job. Second of all, I have to try to excel in doing that job. And third, I have to try to get the eye of the management team. And you're right about McHugh. You could see the emotion at the end of the game. That was a bit more than normal. That was, you told me what to do here.
Yeah.
Burke tipping his hat to McHugh about obviously the rivalry. Obviously he would know very well with Armagh, and it worked. And you could get a sense there, that it was like we had a plan for this, and it came true, which is positive.
Dublin beat Cork in a topsy-turvy game. They needed a last-second save to prevent a 77th minute or 78th minute goal for Cork, which would have given Cork an unlikely and maybe undeserved. But at the same time, Dublin had this game home and hosed. And then had a man sent off, and all of a sudden Cork back in it, having already had a man sent off themselves. Yeah. So I don't know what to take from Dublin's performance.
Yeah, it's a strange one. You don't want to talk about referees, and you don't. But I think throughout the weekend, I don't know what happens. It's like referees are nearly given a memo to kind of ref the league in a certain manner, because some of the yellows, some of the cards, you're just kind of going, oh, Jesus, there has to be a level of intensity in the game. There has to be, even for the crowd, even for the players. And when you're filtering that out so much, people say, oh, it's really a championship pace now, or oh, it's championship now, it's tougher. It shouldn't be that way. Like, the league is as much and as important as the championship is, and you have to be able to test yourself, and there has to be that level of physicality has to be allowed. So not that, and that's not even, by the way, about the Cork Dublin game. It's just throughout games that I watched over the weekend. I thought Cork would be sick. I think they deserved something more out of the game. When Maguire got sent off, I think Dublin kicked 4 or 5 scores to go 5 up, so they made hay, kind of like the sin bin in rugby. They really made sure they made hay, and that was actually a gap that Cork then never really managed to get back themselves. They probably could have had at least another 2 goals. Like, Hurley's was a great, unbelievable save at the end, but like the
square ball, never a square ball.
I know, I could hear you. Like, there's no need to ban the square ball, because you've literally got 2 sets of eyes standing within 3 metres of it, who one could look as the ball's coming out. A ball, a high ball in. Just watch where the players are. It's not that difficult. No, it really isn't. But let's not even go there. But what Farrell, I think, will worry about. I think he will worry about 2 things. I think he will worry about that he has not yet got a forward to carry the mantle, because Costello just isn't doing it for me. He got a point yesterday. He should be, like, if you think back to Bernard Brogan, or if you think back to the lads in the last number of years with Dublin that were really shooting the lights out for them, they were always doing it in the league as well. So there hasn't yet been, like,
Paddy Anders would kick 4 or 5 points in that game.
Paddy would have, and Bernard would have got his thing. Alan, you see, you're kind of relying still on Dean with the freeze. Con comes in and kicks a few. Kilkenny looks a little bit off it for me. He was very poor for the goal where they transitioned the ball down the field. He's actually ahead of the Cork fella who gets on the end of it, and he just can't get back. You actually see him, he just can't. The Cork guy burns him on the inside, and the same literally happened in the second goal, because Scully did the same thing. He was ahead of the Cork guy, he sees it, they're all ball watching, and a ball comes in behind. So they're a little bit, I think they're a little bit open at the back. Hurley gave an absolute masterclass yesterday, like a masterclass. He had Mick Fitzsimons in absolute 6 and 7s, and they're playing this one-on-one at the back. They're playing, listen, you have him, we trust you to have him. So they're not really, like, John Small is marking now, whereas John, for the last number of years, used to play that +1 role. He's now marking 11, and he had his fill of it with Powter. I thought Cork were really, really good. They were electric when they got the ball up front. Their 5 and 7 are really solid. The 6 is a solid player. They have a lot of pace in the team. And they would be sick that they lost that. And I have to say, like, the referee's decision at that particular time, Maguire's a big player for them. He's a massive player for them. And it probably cost them
the red cards, which, I mean, so a square ball goal and the red card, and those, as you say, get the leads. And I know.
And another ball came in near the end, not too far, with the other midfielder plucks it. He was in the square, but he jumps out of the square, catches the ball. Now, I'm not sure of a particular rule. Like, is the rule where you start? I don't know. But anyway, he lands and it's a free. And you're kind of thinking there was a bit of mayhem there. That could have ended up with a score. And again, it's tight margins,
Is the fact that the Dubs get McCarthy back and Fenton embedded in the team after travelling, and then obviously McCaffrey is back and looks like McCaffrey, and they still have Mannion
more
to
like
come.
His dad every year, isn't it? I think, like, I mean, you could see the energy levels straight away. Like, James comes on, throws himself about, gets a good score, kind of stamps his authority in midfield. McCaffrey comes on, and instantly you can see the energy levels go up, gets a score, and again is buzzing around the place. And it is what they need. I think they've missed massively that half-back, the overlapping, where they used to just come at that electric pace, and no one could stick with them. And the plays were set up that eventually there would be a ball over the top, and they'd be just coming right through and goal. And of course, they haven't had much in either for that really, really electric pace off the wing.
Not panic just yet.
I don't think so, but I think, like, he has tried a number of lads in that forward line, right, in that full forward line. And Pascal has been in there. I can't remember the lad who was in there yesterday. I think McGarry, was it? But they just haven't gelled, and they just haven't got scores.
Did Derry beat them on Saturday week up there? the way Derry are playing, I mean, it's hard. I think the bookies have them as Ulster favourites already.
They still have a few lads to come back. Paddy Small's yet to come back.
Yeah.
You know, and Paddy Small is and Davy Byrne will come back in, I would imagine, into that full back line. So you still have a few. Merchant will come back in. So there's 3 players straight away. Like Paddy Small, bar injury, Paddy probably would have been looking at this league campaign as a real campaign to start setting his mark, because he's left foot, he's different, you know, he can come in off the other side. But that is going to be a cracker. Like Derry are playing at a level now where it's not even that they're playing unbelievable football, but they are just playing like a machine. They know exactly what they're at and what they're about, and they know their game plan inside out. And if you fall into the trap which they lure you into, they'll just eat you up all day. But they can be got at. I noticed, like, people are saying Meath were bad. Meath could have had 3 goals in that second half. And actually, I would say Gallagher could sit back and look and say, actually, we were opened up a few times there. And if Meath had a little bit more composure about themselves, they could have had 3 goals in the second half. But, you know, the game was dead and buried at that stage. But if you fall into the trap of giving the ball back to Derry, good luck.
Yeah. We can talk about Meath again. Pretty disappointing first half.
Very disappointing, and that's what I'm saying. They fell into the trap. Yeah, and what they tried to do is they tried to replicate what they have been doing, which has been kind of working. But we mentioned it last week, and we mentioned it, or 2 weeks ago, we mentioned it before. They were conceding a lot. So they were giving the ball to teams, and their defensive structure, I believe, is not set up yet, right? They are one-on-one. They don't really have a defensive midfielder, and so they're getting opened by teams. Like Cork should have put 220, 221 on them. Clare could have had 17, 18, 19 points on them. So if you give the ball to Derry won't kill you on a shootout, but what they'll do is they'll just make sure you don't get the ball back.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is they'll just grind you down, they'll get their scores, and then they'll set up. And you know, when it was kind of all done and dusted, they then realised, actually, we probably have to run this ball. And at that stage, it was too late.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, Anthony. Thanks a million.
No bother, lads.
That's this week's Allianz National Football League conversation. You can get more on the football pod as well. But don't miss all the action. Rugby Daily later today in your OTB podcast.